I'm joined by Brent, the head risk manager down at DSI Sportsbook for this week's version of the Odds Report. Brent, how's it going today, man?
Not too bad. I don't want to poke you at all, Adam. But I'm just other than me being a little bit sunburned from my day off at the beach yesterday. Other than that, everything's fine.
Yeah, it snowed here today. Well, today recording this on Thursday, and I think we're supposed to get like 4 to 6 inches of snow next Tuesday. So I hope you get severely sunburnt next time you go out.
feeling Christmassy already, are you?
Oh yeah. Bah humbug, absolutely.
There you go.
Dude, it's November 7th. It shouldn't be snowing yet.
Well, the Christmas stuff shouldn't be up either. That's what I don't know what it's like back there, but here in Costa Rica, it's nuts. Like the day after Halloween or even before, Christmas stuff starts going up, and I'm just like, you got to be kidding me.
And I love Christmas, but man, I don't want to hear Christmas music in the mall on like November 5th. I don't.
Yeah, no, I'm very much the same way. I'm all for it, like the few days before and a couple days after, but other than that, it's like, come on.
All right, well, we got a lot of stuff to get to here in college football, so we'll run through the games with sharp action. And you know what? Fortunately enough, a lot of big games here on the card for this week, so we'll be able to touch on those as we go throughout this segment. We start with a game that's not a particularly big one. It does have a big spread, though. Game 117-118 here, Clemson and NC State. What are we starting with here today, Brent?
Yeah, it's interesting now that like the official rankings come out and stuff like that. So you start looking at teams who are top ranked teams, say the top 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever you have, and you kind of start thinking about teams maybe now that the things have kind of settled a bit in terms of knowing where you are, that the possibility or maybe the probability of teams running up scores, because that does factor in, to how big was the performance and stuff like that. You start seeing stuff like that, and I'm not going to, kind of read between the lines and suggest that this play on Clemson by the Sharps was, kind of dialing into that. But I did take sharp money on Clemson this game. Clemson's, I think, ranked number 5 in the rankings, I believe. It was minus 30.5 when they got bet, and it's just been like a steady tick up on Clemson as well. I mean, we moved, quite aggressively right away. But just like even going 32, even 32.5, hung around for a while. Today we're sitting at 33, so it's just gradually gone up. My wager count is, also favors Clemson as well, so I got a count of about 3-1 going that way. And it's kind of NC State is at home, but I mean they've lost 4 of the last 6 games. That they played Wake Forest last time out, and they got thumped by Wake Forest by I think 34, which is more than this spread here. The only kind of caveat I guess as a bettor I might be looking at is like next week they are at Wake Forest, Clemson is, so that's kind of, if there was ever kind of like a look ahead, that might be it. But Clemson too, it's still tough with them because you're looking at their schedule and who they've played. There's no top ranked opponents on their schedule yet, not until next week against Wake Forest. So I kind of interested to see what happens with them next week. But I guess the Sharps are betting on the fact that they're not looking ahead to next week either.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point because Clemson did start, I guess I would say it was an underwhelming start for them. I know they beat Georgia Tech, but Georgia Tech was in that game for the most part. It just didn't seem like they had that killer instinct early in the year. Now, as you mentioned, the margin of victory could end up mattering. So that's probably something I need to adjust in my power ratings going into next week, is that there's more incentive for some of these really good teams to, as you said, win by big numbers. And we may see some of those big, favorites that are top 6, top 7 in the college football playoff. We may see some of those big numbers go up a little bit here as we go forward. Maybe Ohio State, which already has gone from 42 to 43.5, maybe a similar type of thing there.
Yeah, I mean, Ohio State too. I mean, they honestly this year they've just looked so good too. And we're talking about the Clemson game here, but yeah, you kind of get into this time of year where that stuff might factor in, and it is also like not what happened like months ago, but what have you done for me lately kind of thing. That's kind of lasting impressions. I think will go a long way in terms of. I mean, you look at the teams that are ranked up there right now. It's quite a a bottleneck of undefeated teams. So if you can think of like jockeying for position and what you need to do to get up there, big wins are certainly going to be a way to do that.
All right, so we take a look here at game 123-124, Texas Tech and Virginia. Interesting game here. Both of these teams off of some extra rest. Texas Tech with the full bye. West Virginia played on Thursday last week against Baylor. Early kickoff in Morgantown. Seems like it wouldn't be a great spot for Texas Tech, but the line movement says otherwise so far.
Yeah, I mean, this one has moved, I got bet that at 1. I think the opening number was as low as a pick here. Texas Tech -1 is where I got bet by sharp money. We're sitting at 2.5 right now. I know there's some 2.5 -15s out there, or even some 3-dog 20. So this number does seem to be, trending right now towards the 2.5 and juice, or perhaps we'll sit on 3. These both teams are both sitting at 3 and 5. They're both 1 and 4 in conference, but West Virginia too. You look at a team who's lost 4 straight games. They've got some tough games on the schedule. I think they close out with like Oklahoma and Baylor a couple more games. So they're it's tough. Texas Tech, they are sitting only 3 wins, but they've played 3 of the top 25 teams as well. So, tough schedules when you're in that conference as well. So you're kind of looking at, you can't really look at, comparisons, say, how did this team do versus the other team and come up with your numbers. It's all more based on matchups here. Again, maybe not the best game on paper in terms of these teams with their record, but sharp money, like I said, was on -1. This number did open as low as pick. Kind of just, you look for, I guess as a bettor, you kind of look for like home dogs and stuff like that, but obviously you don't want to go against sharp money in this case.
Is the public going the same way here?
Yeah, I've got a count. I mean, it's not a massive count. It's only 2-1 favoring Texas Tech, so not a real big count, decided one way or another, but the public is going the same way.
And it does look like -3, probably going to be the predominant number here sometime on Friday or Saturday.
Yeah, and what's kind of interesting for me is if it gets to 3 or like at 3, maybe -05 and stuff like that, see if that's what it takes to draw West Virginia money. I can't see us jumping on 3 and going above that. If we sit to 3 and no sharp money comes in the other way, or either way, we'll probably just end up sitting on that number.
All right, so we jump down to game 137, 138 here. Wake Forest, you mentioned already, with Clemson on deck, taking on Virginia Tech. And we talked about this game on Thursday's show. I'll let you go ahead and talk about the sharp action first, but hearing the side that's got some sharp money does not surprise me here.
Yeah, sharp money on the home dog here with Virginia Tech. The number is down to 2 or even 1.5. Some 1.5s are popping up. I did get as high as 3, and that's where the sharps jumped in on Virginia Tech. So I do have sharp money on the home dog here, +3, Virginia Tech. You saw them last week. They played Notre Dame real tough. It wasn't until late in the game they lost that game by 1 point. So that probably, didn't, probably help their case a little bit here in terms of the public being with them as well. Not a massive wager count, but it is about 2-1 favoring Virginia Tech. So I've got, again, another game where I've got sharps and public on the same side. Wake Forest is sitting here at 7-1. On the road to a 5-3 team, and it's Virginia Tech at 5-3, getting the money. Wake Forest too. This is potentially a big game for them because they are, like I said, sitting at 7-1. They lost, a very close game to Louisville, and they're at Clemson next week. So, maybe it's a case of look ahead. We're at Clemson, but with this line so tight, I just don't see that happening.
What we talked about on Thursday's show is, I can't remember a top 20 or a top 25 team in the poll getting this disrespected week in and week out. Nobody wants to bet Wake Forest.
Yeah, no, I mean, but maybe there's more to it. Maybe at least following the sharp money, maybe they're onto something. And again, you kind of want to side with the sharp money more times than not. But yeah, you're right. And again, it's kind of a non-traditional school in terms of Wake Forest sitting there at 7-1. You're used to these teams, being around 500.
All right, so we jumped down one spot here, game 139, 140, and this line was a little bit of a runaway train earlier on in the week. Seems like we've kind of reached a stopping point here now, but Appalachian State and South Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, App State, they kind of just goes to show, I guess, when you look into teams' records, you can't really just look at the record on the surface. You have to look at, who they beat, what their schedule was like and stuff like that. App State did beat North Carolina earlier this season, which, may or may not be all that or, a big deal or not. App State with the one loss, of course, was last week to Georgia Southern. So maybe not surprised here to see this number go up the way it has. Home favorite South Carolina got bet here, -4, and we're up to -6 right now. Again, just another bad spot for us where the public has tailed the sharps. We're sitting at with a wager count of 3-1 favoring South Carolina as well. So I don't see, I wouldn't be surprised if 6.5 was in the near future.
I wonder, I mean, just based on your feel for, how the markets have bet App State and South Carolina, do you think 6.5 is a spot where maybe App State sharp money does come in and maybe bring it back down to 6 or 5.5?
I don't know. It could be a case of just this, the general consensus or, the opinion in the market, because that's what drives these numbers. The opinion in the market could be they're just, they're in way over their heads. Even since I've been at 6, I'm still getting a wager count about 3-1 favoring South Carolina. So not just the initial money at -4 where it was, all one-sided, even at 6 is still one way. So my feeling is it's going to hit 6.5. Whether that's enough to stem the tide, I don't know.
All right, so we jumped out one spot here. Battle of Unbeatens, game 141, 142, Penn State and Minnesota. What's going on with this one, Brent?
Yeah, I mean, Minnesota is quite an interesting case because you're just kind of like looking at their schedule and they've kind of beat up on lower level teams, if you want to call that. I would say they've probably got an easy schedule. Sharp money here has been coming in on Penn State. My wager count, only about 2-1 favoring Penn State, so it is kind of trending that way in terms of the line move. We've gone from 6 to -6.5. I see some juice being popped up on a couple books as well on the 6.5. So I've got some -6.5, -15s going as well. So looks like this number might touch 7, just the way it's been going. Penn State, of course, one of the top ranked teams as well on the coaches poll, sitting at 8-0. They've got, they've beat some top ranked teams like Iowa and Michigan. They play Ohio State later. That's going to be like their last real big test. Of course, is the Ohio State game. But you might argue this is a pretty big game as well with the number 17 ranked team Minnesota. And again, you touching on Minnesota, it's like they've anyone's undefeated. Good for them getting here. But really, they have had a quite an easy schedule. Now they get Penn State, then they've got Iowa. They end up with Wisconsin. So we're really going to find out a whole lot about Minnesota in the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, it certainly seems like we are. And, I got to say here, as we've gone through the first 5 games, and I wonder if the next one's a little bit different, but as we've gone through the first 5 games here, Sharp and Public on the same side. So you're going to have a lot of rooting interests here this week to go against that.
Yeah, I mean, all we can do is use the numbers, and try and balance action as best we can. Just kind of throw stuff out there and find the point when we start getting money back, whether it's Sharp or Public. You just get the feeling that 7 might be the number that finally gets some money back on Minnesota. Again, you're talking about a home dog, you're getting a touchdown and stuff like that. At one of the top ranked teams, so it kind of seems like a spot where 7 might be the number. And again, if that were the case, if I'm fortunate enough to get money back at the +7, I'm certainly very comfortable dealing Penn State -6 and getting money on them and getting money back at +7 the other way.
Something that's kind of interesting here to me in this business, before we talk about LSU and Alabama, the construction of the rotation numbers for the board. Right above LSU, Alabama, you have South Alabama and Texas State. Right below it, you have New Mexico State and Ole Miss. It almost feels wrong that those 2 games are close to LSU, Alabama in any way.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I don't even know how the rotation numbers come up. I know that they set them out and then the times get all bounced around. So the timing, it's not related to the times of games and stuff like that, it seems. So yeah.
I don't know. It's
yeah.
Weird. Well, anyway, game 167, 168 here is LSU and Alabama. You may have heard of these teams. In fact, you may have bet on one or both of these teams here so far this season. What's going on here, Brent, with the biggest game of the regular season?
Yeah, I mean, we talked earlier about how you've seen, a lot of, I guess, typical games with brand name teams over the years. You would expect competitive games and competitive markets. That really hasn't been the case this year. There's been a lot of games where you see teams who should be like competitive games and close prices, and you end up with lines that are like -13.5 and stuff like that, and games being decided by 20 points. This one here, I mean, it's got all the makings of a barn burner. So far, right now, I mean, this game is up there with my NFL games in terms of my overall handle, which is very, very big. This number just keeps going down on Alabama. We're sitting at there's 6 right now. I've even seen a 5.5 earlier today touch the board, so that's something to watch out for. Sharp money is on the road dog LSU +7, so I got +7 sharp money on LSU. I'm sitting at 6 right now. Like I said, I see some 5.5s popping up on the board as well right now. So it just seems like this number is going to be bouncing between probably 5 and 6. That wouldn't surprise me at all. LSU, these teams, I mean, Alabama, this is kind of like the game for them. It's the biggest game on their schedule so far, so they kind of got to get past this one. I'm not going to say they've had an easy schedule, but they've kind of made it look easy, sitting at 8-0. LSU, a little bit tougher. They beat Auburn last week, so that was kind of like the marquee game for them, and this is the last big one on their schedule as well. my wager count does favor LSU as well. So I got, public and sharp money going the same way there. So, I think by game time, we'll probably find the number that gets money back. And if it happens to be at 6 that it comes in, or if we have to go down to 5.5, that'll be fine. Not really too worried about that. Since I've gone to 6, I've kind of stemmed the tide in terms of the one-way count. At the number 6 itself, I am pretty much balanced in terms of both my money and wager count. So that kind of worked out for us. But I think, the public is just kind of have that tendency to liking LSU, and I think they're probably going to, it's one of those things like, I don't know, like kind of like a Floyd Mayweather thing where people want to bet against Alabama. They want to see them lose.
Now, I will ask you this, because I think that this is something, it's a pretty interesting storyline here that's probably not getting as much run in terms of the betting market as it should, but Tua, if Tua is officially named the starter here for Alabama, do you move the number or do you let the action move the number? Because I think it's going to happen either way.
Yeah, you kind of just hold the number and you wait, for your first major hit just to know where it's going to go. Again, because of my wager count going the other way, you don't want to jump the gun and have, push your number up and have a sharp guy go back the other way. So you get a situation where you've got a couple sharps and the public going the same way with LSU. So when that comes out, we'll probably just, take the first hit and move with the market. It'll when it comes out, it's going to come fast as well.
All right, so how about the total for this game? Because, you look at these two offenses, they're both top 5 in yards per play, and yet the totals actually come down a little bit.
Yeah, my wager count on this one is pretty much dead even, so I'm just kind of following the market where it is. Like I said, my wager count, almost perfectly balanced in terms of the numbers I've got, and my bet count either way. It had opened, I think, as high as 65.5 here, down to 62.5. I don't have, big action either way. Just looking, even when I was at 65, it was pretty much, two-way action. So I really haven't, I haven't kind of got any decisions at any numbers in terms of the total. I've just gone down with the market.
All right, one more game on the college football side here. And LSU, Alabama, the best game of the week is a 3:30 Eastern kickoff. The 8 o'clock game here is Iowa State and Oklahoma. And based on what we've seen the last several weeks with Iowa State, seems like the sharp money has jumped off of the Cyclones train here, at least for 1 week.
Yeah, it's going back years now that I just get the feeling that Iowa State is one of the tough, the more difficult teams to figure out. I don't know if the Sharps have a hard time figuring them out at all, but I think just my general perspective is one of those things where you kind of expect them to win and they don't. When you expect them to lose, they win, stuff like that. They're one of the harder teams, at least for me to figure out. This number has gone from -13 where I took sharp money, so I got sharp money on Oklahoma -13, and we're up to 14.5 right now. Just kind of gone with the market there. I still have at 14.5. It's kind of like the point where you talk about how we're moving numbers and see what starts to stem the flow, and right at 14.5 is where I'm just starting to get slightly more Iowa State money, but just almost an even wager count, but just slightly more towards Ohio State. Even at 14, it was still more favoring Oklahoma. So my count's not dramatically one-sided, but it is in favor of Oklahoma. But 14.5 seems to be at least in-house here. It's the number that's working for me right now. I know a couple of books have like 14 and like -14, -115 and stuff like that up there. I've just gone straight to 14.5. Iowa State, you look at them. They're 5-3 on the year. All 3 losses have been in top 25 teams, so it's they're obviously a decent team. They're just maybe not that upper echelon team. Here they are in a road spot. Oklahoma, they lost to was Kansas State, and not that Oklahoma's going to be looking ahead, or you think that won't, but they're next week at Baylor, so that's a big game for them, and they end the season at Oklahoma State. So again, you kind of don't think the team's going to look ahead, but it does happen now and then. So we'll see what happens. Right now, 14.5 is working for me, though.
All right, so as we move over to the NFL side, a reminder to everybody out there, use your odds screen to your advantage. Again, some books cater towards sharper players. Some books cater towards more recreational players. They won't take a lot of sharp exposure. Always important to use that odds screen to your advantage. And I try to encourage people to do that. I'm sure a lot of people listen in the car, but if you're listening at your computer or something else, have that odds screen up as we go through these games. One of the reasons why I do them by rotation order. But we transition over to the NFL here, and we start with game 255, 256, Arizona and Tampa Bay, and some interesting sharp activity in this game.
Yeah, we have a slightly lighter NFL card in terms of sharp action. That just reflects the fact there is a shorter card this week, Adam. We got like 5 teams on the bye this week. In this game, I like this spot. I mean, obviously, you when the Sharps come in, I don't really argue with them too much in terms of what they see, because I'm just here balancing the books. I'm not really a better per se, and I don't handicap at the level they do. We have people help us with stuff like that, but this is one of those games where you had to open high because the public was going to bet the over. Just the nature of teams with Arizona and Tampa Bay. You've got the idea of Arizona, that high flying offense, and of course Tampa Bay's been high scoring games going back to last season. So you're like 2.5, a season and a half into this of getting used to Tampa Bay putting up a whole lot of points or giving up a whole lot of points. So I think that the perception here was definitely going to drive this number, and that's why we were as high as we were at 53.5. I believe the highest opening number was 54, and a sharp money that has driven this one down. I've got a wager count of about 2-1, almost 3-1 favoring the over, and I have sharp money on the under. So under 53.5 is where that sharp money came in. Again, I think that just the perception here in this one, I'm kind of for it. Now, it's going to sound contradictory, I guess, because Tampa Bay's been involved in 6 consecutive games that have had the total points scored in the 50s, but I just don't see these offenses both as dominant as people might think. Defensively, I think Tampa Bay has a strong run defense. They do did a good job with their front. Arizona does a decent job of getting pressure on the passer, and we've seen what Jameson does when he's under pressure. So he's just not quite that good. And I think if both these teams can kind of avoid the big chunk plays, I think this one does kind of get under. I think it might get under quite easy. Now we're sitting at 52. It seems to be kind of like the number that's working in terms of balancing stuff out. It looks right now, just because the early money that I took, I'm probably going to still need the under, which is good because I'm going to be sided with the sharps in this game. But again, I don't want to over handicap it because that's just not what I do. But I think if these teams avoid big plays, I think this number kind of slides in easy. I know Tampa Bay sitting at 2-6 and Arizona 3-5-1 on the year, so it's not marquee games. Wager count here, not heavily involved, just because of these teams, but I do have a count about 2-1 favoring Tampa Bay as well on the side. So the number on the side, I'm just mentioning the count on the side because it has gone down. This number opened as high as 6 and 5.5, and it's gone down to 4.5 where we are right now. So it seems to be a wager count favoring Tampa Bay. Like I said, almost 3-1 favoring the Buccaneers, yet the numbers drop down. So if I was going to read into things, I would say sharp money on Arizona, but I don't know that for a fact based on what I've taken in store.
All right, so we're looking at game 257, 258 here, and technically speaking, the Giants are on the road against the New York Jets, even though these two teams share the same stadium there in East Rutherford at the Meadowlands. So no home field advantage or anything to worry about here in this game. What's happened with the side?
Yeah, I mean, the side, you can just look at the opening numbers and see where we are now and kind of read into that one. We're sitting at 3 dog 20 right now on the Giants. I have seen some 2.5 minus 15 on this one. The number opened as low as a pick, and that's where I got bet by sharp money right away on the Giants. So the road Giants, as you will, at a pick is where I took that sharp money. Again, this is on paper and probably in front of your eyes, it's going to be an ugly game, but I've got a wager count pretty much dead even. I haven't got a whole lot of action in terms of the public involved in this. Just the sharp money on the side, I had to pick them, so I'm kind of just fishing for money to come back. It is a bit of a tough spot sometimes because it's not one of those big games. You're not going to get a ton of action. Hopefully some money from the local market will come flowing in closer to game time. We'll get something back on the Jets, but the Jets, you talk about the quarterback situation all you want, but I think their offensive line is just a real big liability for them. Their secondary, it's interesting because their secondary too. What I've watched, I mean, I've kind of watched replays of a couple of these games lately, and the Jets, they seem to have a very strong run defense, but their secondary is very, very weak, and it's kind of ironic because the fact that they have such a strong run defense almost forces teams to throw the ball more, which plays into the kind of the game plan that exposes them. It's kind of, I just kind of laugh at the irony of that one.
All right, so we just talked about the Jets. We're going to talk about Miami here in a second with some sharp involvement in their game. Did you guys happen to put up a will Miami go 0-16 prop, since obviously that one's dead now?
Yeah, no, we did not have that one. And the way Miami's playing, I would have taken that one. I would have taken that. No, they wouldn't go 1-16. Just, I mean, ever since, it's funny with Fitzpatrick. I mean, he gets there on these teams. It happened with Tampa Bay last season. He just kind of, at least temporarily, gives him a whole lot of energy.
Well, and I guess maybe that has something to do with the sharp involvement here on game 267, 268, which is Miami at Indianapolis. What's going on here?
Yeah, I mean, I find this very interesting just because of all the injuries that are on the offense of both these teams. T.Y. Hilton is out for the Colts. Paris Campbell is out. Jacoby Brissett is questionable here. And Preston Williams, he's also out for the Dolphins. So I mean, you're talking about a team who didn't have a whole lot of weapons. The running back, he got suspended as well. I believe that was Walton. So it's like all the offensive weapons on both teams are out. Yet this number's gone up, and it's been sharp money that drove that. The total here was over 43, where I took sharp money, and we're sitting at 44 right now. My count is about 2-1 on the over as well, so I guess it was just kind of a little bit low now. For us, I don't think it's going to be a massive adjustment with Brissett or Hoyer at quarterback, because I think it's the Colts very much. It's about a scheme kind of thing. They just play a very good system offensively, so I don't think the number is going to move a ton. Regardless of who's at quarterback, and we saw last week as well that Hoyer did pretty well. I mean, the first pass he threw all season was a touchdown pass. And the thing too, I kind of, again, I don't like to, get when Rosen was a quarterback for the Dolphins, different case. When Fitzpatrick is out there, I mean, he just pushes the ball downfield so much. I mean, he's the volume of his deep plays, how aggressive he is. You just have the possibility for big explosive plays, and that's always an upside for the over. The Colts, they do run the ball very well. They pass block well and stuff as well. Miami, I don't think, has a very good defense. They're poor with putting pressure on the quarterback as well. So I see a situation where you kind of, sometimes when you're handicapping a game, you can look at game flow and kind of look and say, this is how I see the game going. And I think both these teams will have success running, moving the ball. If the Colts jump out early, Fitzpatrick's going to be aggressive, pushing the ball downfield, and they'll kind of be back and forth in terms of driving this number up. I just think this sets up well for the over, and I kind of, I'm glad that that the sharps are on the over. I wish I had a lot of public money on the under, but maybe if Hoyer comes, now that he's starting, maybe this number will tick down. If it does, I think it'll just get beat back up to where it is right now at 44.
Well, it does look like there's some more support from Miami from a side standpoint here in this game too.
Yeah, I mean, Miami, honestly, ever since Fitzpatrick's been out there, they've been getting support week after week. I mean, even in, back in the days when the lines were like minus 21 and stuff like that, Miami was constantly getting support.
All right, so we got one more game to look at here on the NFL side. That is game 269, 270. The Rams on the road against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and this sharp activity may surprise some people out there. I know it surprises me.
Yeah, it's interesting because, we always, for a couple of years now, you've talked about how Goff, his home and road splits are just not very good, obviously being a whole lot better at home and not so good on the road. Yet, the Rams are sitting here at 3-1 on the road. So that kind of goes against the kind of tendency and kind of perception that we have of Goff. And Pittsburgh, it's interesting. Pittsburgh's they've just been a competitive team. They're playing kind of like Steeler football. I mean, even all the losses they've had in terms of personnel in the offseason, the trades and stuff like that, the quarterback situation, but they've been, a tough competitive team. Sharp money was this number did go all the way up to 4, and that's where the sharp money came in on Pittsburgh plus the 4. This is finally one of those games where I've got a sharp and public split with the sharps on Pittsburgh and the public count favoring the Rams. I'm almost at a 3-1 count favoring the Rams. It kind of surprised me. I kind of expected a count towards the Rams for sure, but maybe not so much, just because Pittsburgh over the years has been such a public team as well. In the Rams' favor as well, you've got them coming off a bye, so that's kind of a spot that people look for in terms of betting teams, backing teams off the bye. But sharp money here on Pittsburgh at home plus 4.
Well, and then one parting note here in the NFL, you got 2 really good primetime games. And this year, we haven't had a lot of good primetime games for Sunday night and Monday night. And really, the Monday nighters have by and large been kind of a disappointment. But Minnesota, Dallas on Sunday night, Seattle, San Francisco on Monday night should be a lot of late activity for you guys to balance the books with.
Yeah, I mean, those games are going to be massive in terms of action. I talked about how LSU and Alabama was, equivalent to one of those, one of the bigger NFL games already. So really looking forward to a high volume weekend for us. And again, when you get high volume, it makes it easier for us in terms of balancing books as well. Looking at, Dallas and the Miami and Minnesota game, I think the line opened as low as 2.5, but pretty much 3 is where all the money's been ridden. I'm totally balanced in terms of my count on that one at 3. I got money both ways at 3, so it's worked out real well for us. The Seattle San Francisco game, I am kind of surprised the numbers as high as it was, just because, San Francisco's undefeated, but Seattle's just, been such a, explosive team. Yeah, they have their weaknesses and stuff like that, but I just, from my side, I think I'm going to have to move down. Just, if the market doesn't go down to 6, I'm probably going to have to go there myself, just because I have such a massive one-sided wager count favoring the Seahawks. I guess, I'm as square as the public bettors are, because they're backing them at the plus 6.5 count. There was like almost 6-1 favoring Seattle. So that's kind of, at least in-house, something that I'm going to have to, look out for, just to see where this market goes. If a couple of books start trickling down, I'm going to jump and be right there with them. If this line goes up, I'm probably going to hang where I am right now.
Brent, the head risk manager down at DSI Sportsbook. A lot of stuff here, a lot of marquee games, and some good insights on the NFL as well. So, Brent, always a pleasure to chat with you, man. Thank you so much for joining me, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Thanks again, Adam. Talk to you later.